At midnight, the world was already known, but history was rewritten. At midnight, sailors, scholars, and kings believed they were discovering new lands, but someone had already seen the world, and they were erased from history. Chapter 1. The Map That Should Not Exist. In a quiet chamber, hidden beneath centuries of dust and stone, a map lay forgotten. It was not in any known atlas. Its edges were frayed, its parchment brittle, yet its details defied time. Coastlines stretched farther than historians had imagined. Islands appeared where none were recorded. The continents seemed mapped with a precision centuries before. Any European explorer could have reached them. This was no ordinary chart. Whoever had drawn it understood currents, tides, and lands beyond the horizon. The map contained notes in cryptic symbols, some familiar, others entirely alien. Ships were marked with tiny annotations, suggesting voyages that may never have been recorded. Rivers and mountain ranges spanned the page with a certainty that contradicted every official map of the era. Scholars who glimpsed the map whispered in disbelief. Who could have created such a thing? Where had they traveled? How had they learned so much without the ships, instruments, and knowledge of the 15th century? Questions piled on questions, yet answers were elusive. But the map was dangerous. Power, knowledge, and destiny were tied together. If rulers discovered that the world was already known, the carefully constructed narrative of exploration and conquest would crumble. Thus, the map was hidden, locked away in a monastery, buried in royal archives, or secretly passed between a few trusted hands. Those who studied it were sworn to secrecy, and some disappeared, leaving only whispers behind. It is a paradox, a document so detailed and accurate that it could rewrite history, yet so obscure that the world would remain ignorant of it for centuries. The map was a silent testament to voyages and discoveries, erased, forgotten, or deliberately hidden. And for those who dared to study it, one question always remained. Who had the audacity to see the world before the world itself was ready to be seen? Chapter 2. Sailors Who Never Returned. The map's existence was not merely theoretical. It guided men across uncharted seas, but those who dared to follow it rarely returned. Legends tell of sailors who sailed beyond known horizons, returning with tales too strange to be believed, or not returning at all. Ships vanished, swallowed by the ocean, leaving behind only driftwood and rumors. Some believed it was the wrath of gods offended by men seeking lands beyond the horizon. Others suspected rival kingdoms or jealous monarchs had orchestrated their demise. The most persistent theory, however, pointed to the map itself. It was said that the knowledge it offered was dangerous. Those who possessed it risked more than their lives. They risked the very narrative of history. Accounts survive in fragments. A ship spotted near icy lands far from Europe, with crew claiming to have seen coasts and rivers unknown to the scholars of their homeland. Another sailor returned briefly, insisting he had seen mountains taller than the Alps and forests filled with creatures the world had never imagined. Days later, he vanished without explanation, leaving behind only his logbook, which some claimed contained coded coordinates tied to the forbidden map. Fear gripped every mariner who even heard of its existence. The map's voyages were kept secret, passed quietly among navigators brave enough to follow its instructions. Legends describe long, dangerous journeys, storms that seemed almost supernatural, strange currents that pulled ships off course, and encounters with peoples unknown to any chronicler. The consequences of sailing the map were clear. Knowledge could lead to power, but power came at a price. Entire crews disappeared, leaving only the echoes of ambition and curiosity. And yet, despite the dangers, some could not resist. The map promised secrets, knowledge the world was not ready to admit existed. And for those who returned, the question lingered. Was the map a tool of discovery or a trap laid by unseen hands? Chapter 3. The Kings Who Feared Knowledge. Knowledge has always been power, and the forbidden map held more than anyone could imagine. When monarchs learned of its existence, fear replaced curiosity. A ruler who possessed it could challenge the authority of all others. It could render treaties meaningless, nullify claims of discovery, and upend the carefully controlled narrative of the age of exploration. Kings convened secret councils, examining fragments, questioning their advisors. Could the map be trusted? If true, it suggested lands already known, coasts already charted, empires already observed. European crowns, hungry for prestige, treasure, and colonies, realized the stakes. If the public or rival nations learned of the map, their power would diminish overnight. In whispers, decrees were made to confiscate, destroy, or conceal. Cartographers were warned, monks were bribed, explorers were bribed or coerced to silence. Some kingdoms even sent assassins to retrieve maps from distant archives. Those who failed were quietly removed from the historical record. The Church, too, feared the implications. To admit that knowledge existed before the sanctioned voyages of Columbus or Cabot would undermine not only political authority, but divine justification for conquest. Maps were sacred, and secrets sacreder. Scholars discovered that censorship was as critical as accuracy. Knowledge had to be controlled. The wrong discovery in the wrong hands could spark rebellion, panic, or loss of prestige. Thus, the forbidden map was treated as a dangerous relic. It was locked away, hidden in libraries, monasteries, and private collections. And yet, whispers of its existence persisted. Fragments copied by hand, notes passed surreptitiously, secrets recorded in code. The kings who feared it knew one truth. Knowledge, once discovered, cannot be unseen, but it can be buried. Chapter 4. Erased from History. Despite its brilliance, the forbidden map vanished from public consciousness. Over decades, attempts were made to sanitize history. Explorers like Columbus were celebrated as discoverers, even though fragments of the map suggested the world had been known long before. Official records ignored prior knowledge. Books and logs that hinted at earlier voyages were lost, destroyed, or altered. Monasteries held secret copies, but even they faded over centuries. Scholars who attempted to study the maps found themselves censored, their work labeled heretical or false. Libraries mysteriously lost manuscripts. Archives had missing pages. The map's existence became a rumor, a ghost story whispered among historians and collectors. Yet evidence remained for the persistent few. A fragment here, a marginal note there, an obscure reference to unknown lands. The map was not entirely gone. It survived in coded notebooks, in sketches hidden in vaults, and in artifacts scattered across continents. But the narrative imposed by kings, explorers, and the Church dominated the story of discovery. Columbus, Cabot, and others were celebrated, while those who had sailed guided by the forbidden map were forgotten. The erasure was complete in textbooks, in libraries, and in public imagination. The map became a secret of secrets, a symbol of knowledge deliberately hidden. The irony was cruel. The more accurate the map, the more dangerous it was deemed. And so it was almost entirely excised from history, leaving only shadows and speculation for future generations. Chapter 5. Secrets that Survive. Centuries passed, and the world changed, but the forbidden map never entirely disappeared. Scholars rediscovered fragments, journals, and sketches that hinted at its existence. Modern cartographers and historians debated its authenticity, its origins, and its implications. Could it have been created by a forgotten civilization, a secret society, or a daring navigator centuries ahead of their time? The mystery endures. Every fragment raises new questions. How did they measure distances? How did they chart lands that supposedly were unknown? Why were these discoveries suppressed? The answers remain elusive, hidden in archives, coded manuscripts, and private collections. Yet its influence is undeniable. The map represents a world where knowledge could challenge power, where curiosity threatened authority, and where history could be rewritten by a single document. For those who study it today, the forbidden map is more than a relic. It is a warning. The past is never fully known, and the story of discovery is always incomplete. Those who uncover it feel the weight of centuries of secrecy. It is a reminder that the world has always been larger, stranger, and more interconnected than the history we are told. And the greatest question remains: if the world was already known, who decided that history should forget? The forbidden map survives in shadows, waiting for those brave enough to follow its path, and curious enough to question everything they thought they knew. If you want to uncover the secrets that history tried to hide, subscribe now and step into the shadows of empires.